Hey y'all, so this is your instructional video for the day. Of course, you can still join the Zoom to watch this video, of course. But first off, I'm going to go ahead and go over your bell ringer from yesterday so you guys get the information, and then we'll go off and do our instruction and what your assignment is today. Okay, so what their bell ringer yesterday was, which these occurs in sexual reproduction but not asexual reproduction. So you should definitely know the answer now that we've gone over both, but so it's asking what does not happen in asexual reproduction. Okay, so genes carry genetic information. Now this always happens. No matter what, genes are going to carry your genetic information. So that's not going to be it. The offspring is made of cells. All living things are made of cells. Remember cell theory. Okay, so this is also always going to be true for no matter what. So that's not going to be the answer either. Cells from two organisms combined. So remember, asexual reproduction means one parent. So this one does not happen in asexual reproduction, but let's make sure it's the best answer. Now, an offspring inherits a set of traits. That's always going to be true, no matter what. Asexual reproduction, it inherits the trait of the one parent, and sexual reproduction, it inherits the traits of a combination of the traits from two parents. So that's always going to be true also. So the answer here was C. All right, so your objective today is to explore how genotypes and phenotypes develop. So first we got to know what a genotype and phenotype are, and then think about how those show up. Okay, so your product students will be able to identify the genotype and phenotype of a trait on a Post-it note. So for those of you in class, you guys will get a Post-it note, and I'll give you guys a phenotype and genotype on the board, and you guys have to identify what the trait would be for those things or the genotype. Okay, for those of you at home, you guys are going to be doing your assignment, and your exit ticket is on your assignment. For those of you in school, you are going to glue the notes that I or Ms. Stanton has given you into your notebook on the right side. Of course, you are encouraged to use color. Okay. Let's see. So those of you at home, you guys will be doing notes also, and you guys are going to be writing what is in red when I change it into red. So first, oops, wrong thing. So the first thing you're going to do is what are genes? And we're reviewing what are genes. Genes are the basic unit of heredity. So remember, genes are a part of DNA. DNA is a part of chromosomes. And so genes are the basic unit, or the smallest unit of heredity. And heredity is the passing down of traits from parent to offspring. Okay, each chromosome contains many genes, and that code for different traits. So make sure those of you at home are writing down in your paper notebook that genes are the basic unit of heredity. Okay, genes are all sexually reproducing organisms have two of every gene. So remember, sexual reproduction, you have two parents, so you get a gene from one and a gene from two, or from a gene from your mom and a gene from your dad. So you end up having two genes per, you have two of every gene. So that's alleles. You have two alleles for every one gene. Okay, one from mom and one from dad. All right, so here's what a genotype is. And those of you at home are going to be writing this down. Those of you that are in the classroom, you guys will be filling in the blanks. So a genotype is the inherited instructions an organism carries within its genetic code. This means this is the actual gene. These are the two letters that we talked about, I believe, last Friday. These are the two letters that come and represent the gene. Okay, so the genotype is the gene, and it's represented by those two letters. Okay, so each gene has an allele. When all the genes are together, they state what their allele are. So we're at like in a conference room here. So an allele is an alternative form of the gene. So again, the genotype is the actual genetic representation, or the alleles. So that's that two-letter code for the gene. Okay, and we talked about dominant and recessive, so I'm not going to really go over it in depth today, but we already talked about dominant and the recessive alleles. So dominant alleles are those that are kind of overpowering, and they're written with the capital letter. Okay, so if there's one capital letter, that's the trait that's going to show because they're overpowering, loud, and bossy. Okay, recessive alleles are those that are being overpowered by the dominant trait or the dominant allele. So they're the shy ones, if you will. Okay, they're the recessive alleles, and they're written with the lowercase letter. So remember that if you have a capital letter and a capital letter, which is two dominant, the dominant trait is going to show up. If you have a dominant trait and a recessive trait, the dominant trait is going to hide or overpower the lowercase letter or the recessive allele. And then if you have a recessive and a recessive, that's the trait that's going to show up. So the only time you have a recessive trait show up is if you have two recessive alleles or two lowercase letters. Okay, so and then you have a phenotype. So a phenotype is the observable trait. Let me put that in red. Those of you at home will be writing that. Okay, the phenotype is any observable trait or characteristic of an organism. So what that means is any trait that you observe, so you see. This is what shows up because of the gene or the genotype. So like brown hair, brown eyes, blue eyes, round face, tall, short, whatever trait you have that is governed by your genes, those are going to be your phenotypes. So genotype is the gene, represented by the two letters, and then a phenotype is a trait that shows up because of that gene. So that's your traits. Again, brown hair, brown eyes, tall, short, round face, whatever. So the phenotype is that trait. Those of you at home should be writing, and those of you in school should be filling in the blanks. Okay. When two genes discover they are identical and they both agree. So if you have two lowercase and two or two uppercase, they're the same, then they're called homozygous. Homo means same. Okay. So capital A will express a capital A, so that means that it's homozygous, meaning the same letter. Lowercase, that's the recessive, also homozygous because they're the same letter. Then there's that one type that you get that is going to be a mixture of the two, so a capital and a lowercase, and those are called heterozygous because hetero means different. And so remember that when you have a capital letter, that capital letter trait is going to be the one that's expressed. So let's practice. Hope that's your exit ticket. Okay. So for those of you that are in my classroom, this is your assignment for today. Let me just make sure you guys know how to do that. Okay, so the directions here, and those of you that aren't in my class and don't have this, it's still a good idea to go ahead and watch so that you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so these are what are called Punnett squares, and these Punnett squares are used to see what the possible genes that you can get from mating or from two parents. So this would be one parent's genes, a capital T, lowercase t, and this is going to be the other parent's genes, which is capital T, lowercase t. So these four boxes are the possible genes that the offspring can get. Okay, so we're going to determine the genotypes and determine the phenotypes that would be expressed for each one. So if capital T means tall and lowercase t means short, which one is the dominant trait? And I'll give you guys a second for those in the chat or those in the classroom. So the dominant trait is which trait here, tall or short? Right, so it's tall. And then the recessive trait, remember, is represented by the lowercase letter. So the recessive trait would be what? right? So short. Okay, so remember your genotypes are the actual 2-letter gene that you can get from your parents. Okay, so their possible genotypes are what is in the boxes. So some of them will have 3, some of them will have 2, some of them will have only 1. So you're not necessarily going to fill in all these boxes. Okay, so this one happens to have 3. What are the possible letter combinations you can get in this square? I'll give you a second. Okay, so you can have capital T, capital T. You can have capital T, lowercase t, or you can have lowercase, lowercase. You're not going to count this one twice because it's the same gene. Okay, so what are the phenotypes or the traits that'll show up with each gene? Okay, so for capital T, would that be short or would that be tall? I'll give you a second. So hopefully you guys said tall. And then for this genotype, capital T, lowercase t, what trait would show up? Or what phenotype? Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Hopefully you guys got tall. And then lastly, for this lowercase t, what trait would show up or what phenotype? Hopefully you guys said short. Good. So we did this kind of last Friday, at least ND did. So we are going to move on into probabilities. So remember, you guys went over this in, I believe, 6th grade. Oh no, you guys are going over this now in 7th grade science. Or sorry, 7th grade math. Okay, so probability is what is the chances of you getting that genotype. Okay, so remember it's going to be what you have divided by the possible. Okay, so how many capital T's do you have in this box? Just one, right? So one. And how many possible do you have? Hopefully you said 3. Okay. Yeah, because there's 3 possible genotypes. So you have a 33% chance on getting this gene right here. Okay. Or is it 25? I'm sorry, it's 1 out of 4. So you have a 25% chance. There's 4 possibles, okay? So then, what about this genotype here? How many of those do you have here in this box? So hopefully you said 2. And there's how many boxes? Hopefully you said 4. Okay, so 2 out of 4 is 50%. You have a 50% chance of getting this genotype. And then lastly, for the short gene, how many of them do you have in here? Hopefully you said just 1. And then total you have 4. So you have a 25% chance of getting this genotype. Okay, so in this case, you have a 75% chance of being tall. And then in this case, you would have a 25% chance of being short. Okay, so that's how you do your assignment ND. I don't think Miss Ferris or Mr. Castillo has this worksheet because I made it up last year. But it's a good idea. Just make sure you guys know this, okay? So, ND, if you have any questions about this assignment, please let me know in a private comment. But Miss Ferris and Mr. Castillo, you guys can, ND, you guys are good to go. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will help you as best I can. Hopefully this example will help you finish the rest of it. Ms. Ferris and Mr. Castillo, please let your students know what they need to do